Within a Sports Central, we go for a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 1 matchup between Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Two teams that have a lot of potential looking forward to 2024, but only one of these teams gets to start 1-0. So with that, we'll be going for a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started. Against me on Saturday, the 31st in College Station. Some would say this is the biggest matchup of Week 1. Two teams that are ranked in the top 20, plus you consider the storylines heading into this one. Riley Leonard, new quarterback for Notre Dame, facing off against his former head coach, Mike Elko. This is the first game of the Elko era in Texas A&M. So you consider that. You consider two teams that could be in the college football playoff this season. It's a pretty big matchup coming up here in Week 1. Spread's going Texas A&M by 2.5. Over-under is 46.5, so maybe a more defensive matchup we could expect here. FBI is going Notre Dame, though, right around 59%. So spread and the FBI do disagree on this one. The series history, the Irish lead at 3-2. The last time we saw these two teams play each other was back in 2001 when Texas A&M won in College Station 24-3. Your second comparison, Notre Dame last season. These are your stats from 2023. So obviously things are different looking forward to 2024, but this can give you an idea as to where both teams were strongest last season. And honestly, this could be similar in 2024. Notre Dame's a very balanced team overall. They were 8th in points per game, 9th in points allowed last season, both in the top 10 in the country. But when it came to the passing game, that you could say was the main weakness, which obviously was a little bit of a surprise with having Sam Hartman in there, who was really impressive heading in after his time at Wake Forest. When it comes to defense, Notre Dame was especially impressive against the pass, but also a top 30 rush defense. Definitely not to be slept on. But for Texas A&M overall, I mean, this wasn't a terrible team last year. They were 29th in pass yards a game, 90th in rush yards. This was a stronger team on defense. I would just say Texas A&M was a bit of an inconsistent team last year. They were actually a really competitive team. They had only 7 wins, which doesn't look good, but this team was very competitive, though. When they played Alabama, they kept it within 6. They played Tennessee on the road, who was ranked in the top 20 at the time. Lost to them by a touchdown. Ole Miss was really good last year, and they went right up next to them. They lost the game 38-35, lost by 3. They were competitive at LSU, competitive against Oklahoma State. Problem was, all of those games were losses last season. So for Texas A&M, it's just about getting over the hump and finding a way to win some of those close games against good teams. This team pretty much beat every team they should have last season, and most of those games were in convincing fashion. Obviously, the Miami game was kind of a different story, but things changed after that. And so for the Aggies heading into the season, ranked 20th in the country, I think this team is deserving of that. This is a talented enough team to be a contender in the SEC this season. It's just about, can they win the close games against those really good opponents. But with that, your key points: Notre Dame 10-3 overall. Irish have a favorable road to being a national contender. You look at their schedule this season, you'll see why. This, honestly, you could say this is the toughest game on Notre Dame's schedule this season. They play 3 teams ranked in the preseason top 25, those teams being Florida State, or obviously Texas A&M, and then Florida State in November, but they just lost to Georgia Tech, so you never know about them, and then USC on the road to finish out the regular season. So if this team can win this matchup, there is a chance that this team will be favored to go 8-0 heading into Florida State. So I mean, for Notre Dame, you consider that Riley Leonard facing off against his former head coach on the road. I mean, that's a huge storyline of this one. And I mean, Notre Dame's a balanced team that is strong on both sides. I mean, I think Notre Dame's a true dark horse this season. I don't know that they can win a national title, but I think this team could be a true contender by the time we get to November. But yeah, once again, you consider the schedule. It's a pretty favorable road for the Irish. But for Texas A&M, new era under Mike Elko, I think this team is in much better hands now, and I think the future is finally bright. The thing is, you think of the last few years for the Aggies, this team has had so much talent. They've had some talented teams the last few years. It just feels like, I mean, that's the reason why Jimbo was let go, was because this team haven't lived up to the expectations and the expectations that you should have, being a team as talented as this team has been the last few years. But this is a stronger team. They were a stronger team than the record showed last year. Truly believe that with the close losses that they had against really good teams. Defense is likely the main strength. The offense still has some questions. Main one being the quarterback situation. Connor Weigman in there. I mean, you would expect him to be improved. He wasn't very good last year when he played. But overall, though, this team returns a lot of their key starters from last season. So that in itself, I mean, it's obviously different with having a coaching change. But all things considered, I think Texas A&M's in a pretty good position looking forward to 2024. And obviously, you can't forget about the home field advantage here. This is a night game in week 1. And Texas A&M is going to be a brutal environment, almost guarantee you, for Notre Dame here. So that's something you have to consider heading into this one and what is a critical early season matchup. So with that, let's get a prediction here for Notre Dame and Texas A&M coming up here in week 1. Maybe the biggest game of the week. And in the end, I am going to go with Texas A&M to find a way here. 23-20 is what I'm going with. I do think, Notre Dame's the higher ranked team. They're ranked 7th in the country. But there's a reason why Texas A&M is favored overall here. It's the home field advantage. It's also the fact that Mike Elko is the former head coach of Riley Leonard. Mike Elko knows the weaknesses of Riley Leonard, and you can almost guarantee that he's going to try to take advantage of that. And so you consider that. I do think Notre Dame's offense, and it's also, having a new quarterback under center. Just look at how things turned out for Florida State and Uiagalelei in week 0. It can be a challenge having a new quarterback under center, especially in the first week. So with it being such a tough early season matchup on the road against a good opponent, I think Texas A&M finds a way here to have a massive top 10 win in week 1. I do think it's more of a defensive game here, so I am taking the under, but Texas A&M to cover the spread in the end. But with that, let me know your thoughts and comments below on this one. Definitely a fun matchup coming up here in week 1, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.